Sometimes, like, when we're out there, we just call him the big guy. Keep an eye out for the big guy.
Charlene Moody lives on the Warm Springs Reservation in Central Oregon, and the big guy she's referring to is Sasquatch. Moody is one of 5 artists whose work is featured in an exhibit at the High Desert Museum called Sensing Sasquatch.
The show is about the different interpretation of Native artists along the Pacific Northwest and up into Canada, and what their ideas and beliefs are of Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Images of Sasquatch are pretty prevalent here in the Pacific Northwest. You see them on beer cans, t-shirts, even road signs. Many Indigenous communities have a relationship with Sasquatch that goes a lot deeper than these kind of ubiquitous pop culture references.
I've had a number of encounters, or if you will, or experiences with Sasquatch, or in our language we say istiaha.
Philip Cash is an artist, writer, and scholar. He's a fluent Nez Perce speaker, and he co-curated the High Desert Museum's exhibit. A quote from Cash greets visitors at the entrance. It says, "The world is bigger than we know." Inside is a multi-sensory experience. The room is dimly lit, and the art includes moving images projected on the wall, larger-than-life sculptures, a painted mural, 3-dimensional installations, and a soundscape that evokes both the natural world and supernatural elements. There is art that you can touch and even smell. Cash created a large installation using tree branches and antlers.
I called it Istiahanim Wayalah Sanin, which is the Sasquatch's rattle.
On one wall is a large oval-shaped piece that's illuminated with these bright, shifting magenta and white lights. It's kind of hard to describe, but it looks like a portal to another dimension. That's what artist Frank Buffalo Hyde was going for. He has Nez Perce and Onondaga heritage and says he became interested in Sasquatch at an early age. That interest would sometimes show up in his paintings, but this exhibit allowed him to explore it in a new way.
I just never had the support or the space to go full Sasquatch.
From the Gert Boyle Studio, I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. Coming up after a break, we'll hear from all 3 of these artists about what Sasquatch means to them.
So the title of this exhibit is called Sensing Sasquatch, and it's an artistic or aesthetic encounter with species of non-human other, or what we call Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And it's an artistic endeavor to kind of capture the imagination surrounding this being.
I had some disclaimers, like I wanted it to be an air quotes serious exhibition. Like I didn't want it to be sort of like, have a cutout Bigfoot on the side of the road where people can like pull over and get their pictures taken. I didn't want it to be like a tourist trap kind of schlucky kind of thing. I wanted it to be a serious tone where we're not trying to decide whether Sasquatch exists. We're doing an exhibit about how Sasquatch exists and lives in a very real sense and is medicine in Indigenous communities.
Growing up, I'd hear different stories of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, or the big guy. I know a lot of our elders don't really talk about it a whole lot. Like they do and they don't. And so, but I know that there's a big shift within the younger generations because people talk more about it, and I just know it's becoming more common. We just need to be respectful for all the tribes and their different stories, because like even up in Canada, and they're different compared to the stories that my Tuggo would tell from Dad in California, my grandpa.
In my experience and across the community that I'm a part of, the idea about Sasquatch and, it's not like the mainstream where a community person believes or doesn't believe. That's a debate from the mainstream society. And it's when we talk about Sasquatch, it really comes from having an experience. So the experience is the basis for our understanding, and many community people up to the present have had experiences with Sasquatch.
So my impression or interpretation of Sasquatch is from a personal experience that I've had while out in the woods huckleberry picking. We were picking, and I wandered right next to this cedar tree, and I was sitting there just picking, and I was looking down at this bush because it was just loaded with huckleberries. And what I thought was my mom was standing right there. And but for some reason, something inside of me told me not to look up. But I could see like peripherals it right there. And I thought it was my mom, and I was talking to it and just picking, and she wasn't responding, but I could see it right there. And then it kind of, because there was a lot of trees, and it just kind of like walked back into the trees. And I was like, Mom, and I started yelling, and I could just hear her way down there, what? And then I was like, and then it kind of like, then that sense of like, and so I stood up and I walked out into the road, and then I seen my ex-husband come by, and he's like, who are you talking to? And I was like, where's Mom at? And she's like, she's way down there. Well, where's my brothers? They're even further down that way. But it was just that big figure of standing there, and I was just like, oh my God, and like, we should go. And it was really scary, but it was just that big shouldered silhouette.
You know, I was a nosy little brother, and my older sister was into cryptozoology and cryptids and paranormal things. So, of course, I was interested in those things as well. So I've been sort of officially researching cryptids and Bigfoot since I was like 8 or 9.
It's just always been a fascination of mine.
So I designed a rattle, and I made 2 of them, and I called it Istiahanim Wayalah Sanin, which is the Sasquatch's rattle. And the first one is 12 foot in length, and the second one is 7 foot in length. And at the fork end of the wood piece that I created are a number of deer horns suspended between the fork. And when you shake it, it creates a noise. So the intent was to show and challenge the average museum goer that the Sasquatch, or this being, can have agency. That it does give reverence to, this being that we all regard as very significant and important.
Well, the museum they commissioned me to do an installation. What I ended up drawing up and conceptualizing is the moment when Sasquatch disappears into a different dimension. It's sort of like the title of the piece is called Enigma. So I did some sculptural elements using faux fur and reappropriating some prosthetic maquettes that are used to make prosthetic limbs. And I fashioned what became like a 9-foot sculptural installation I call it a relief. It's kind of like a digital relief with sound elements.
My mural, it's based off of our basket weaving designs, but also incorporating like modern colors.
When I was preparing my rattles for the exhibit, Charlene was with me in the shop, and I was watching her, and she's watching each other as we were finishing our art projects. And she told me that, Sasquatch is everywhere, and it's reflected in her art piece, where all of these elements are all melded together in her art piece. And it's not just one element, but many elements together. And we know and understand Sasquatch to be everywhere. And that was, I felt, her intent, and it really comes across through her her art piece. I really like it a lot.
It's like a silhouette of Bigfoot or Sasquatch with buffalo hide attached to it. And with that fur to kind of get that sense of like, oh, this is what it looks like with real fur and everything. But on the front, kind of showing an image of the Mount Hood, and with the forest, and of course of the face in the sky, kind of always watching over this area of which, a lot of our sacred foods come from, our water, and kind of protecting that, but also incorporating that light. Like I like bright colors, and so having those big bright colors on it and kind of giving that modern twist to it. And then of course the little family at the bottom, or mid of the painting, of them being there sharing around a campfire. Maybe they're sharing stories of legends of Bigfoot and everything like that. But somewhere there's going to be I'm going to put Sasquatch or Bigfoot hidden, because a lot of times when you go out there, you don't really know. So you got to look and you'll find it maybe.
And I definitely was trying to push my comfort zone. I was out of my comfort zone. Like I was incorporating sort of digital elements, sound elements. I was trying to recreate this phenomenon called infrasound. It's a disruptive, deep, sensorial vibration sound that makes people feel uncomfortable. In nature, some predators or animals use it to disorient their prey, but a lot of the Sasquatch or Bigfoot sightings have described that sort of disorientating feeling.
Preparing the hide takes a lot of work. There's a long process to it, and I am grateful to have practiced a little bit of it with this project. So once the fire was going, I put in fresh greens, cedar, Douglas, juniper, and sage on it, so it has different compared plants in it. With that different smells, I wanted people who come in to kind of smell that smell too of, the forest of which this being lives in.
I wanted to have something that was visually striking for people to have an experience and then sort of hopefully make something that nobody's ever seen before.
It's really kind of like night and day when you make a comparison between Indigenous perspectives along with the mainstream Western view of Sasquatch. And I would say that in the mainstream ideas about Sasquatch are, that it's a monster-like being, and it's given a masculine type orientation, very aggressive and elusive. In the Native perspective, it is more like a sacred being, and they're highly regarded and respected. Many community people have had experiences and share their stories, but others keep it private because it's quite a profound experience, a transformative one, really, in that sense.
Some people, they don't believe in this or that, and it's kind of like, well, that's fine, but, some point, maybe down the road, wherever, you might change your mind because of an experience that you might have, or someone close to you experience, and then you're like, well, maybe something is there. And so it's fine if you don't, but you do, or it's just maybe keeping those opinions to yourself if you come across someone who doesn't believe it or really believes it, and just being that, okay, that's their own personal view, and this is my own personal view, and coming with that respect and understanding for one another, I think is important.
The title itself, Sensing Sasquatch, that should be a lead towards, how one might sense and feel, having an encounter. And so that lends itself and opens a curiosity, so to speak, for the visitor.
I think to me it's important because you'll have that smell, and so when you go to different areas and you smell that smell again, it's going to bring you back to remembering the exhibit, or if they heard a story or something will kind of trigger inside of them to remember, like, oh, they were talking about maybe being respectful out in the woods, and I'm here in the woods and I smell that cedar. Maybe I should remember that teaching of coming out here with that good heart. I hope that's what happens here.
You've been listening to the voices of artists Charlene Moody, Philip Kashkash, and Frank Buffalo Hide. The Sensing Sasquatch exhibit is at the High Desert Museum in Bend, Oregon through January 12th, 2025. You can see a video of Charlene Moody preparing her art piece and listen to an interview with Frank Buffalo Hide and Philip Kashkash at opb.org. Thank you for listening to The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB. Julie Sabatier produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. The OPB podcast team also includes Mia Estrada and Sage Van Wing. Eric Slade, Jeff Kastner, Arya Sarawi-Joyo, and Dave Miller did the interviews you heard. The music in this episode is from Audio Network, and the sound effects you heard came to us courtesy of the High Desert Museum. If you have a question for us, please reach out. Email theevergreen@opb.org. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.